Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the New Fashion Conservatives podcast. I'm your host, Justin Phillips, and with me, as always, the incomparable, the one and only Shadow Governor Voss.
Robin Voss's strongest soldier.
Who may have his ego inflated a little bit today after listening to another podcast where he got a great shout out. But do want to thank all the listeners to this program who've been texting and emailing or giving us the feedback. Love hearing from all of you. And, you know, we got a great show tonight, but not just tonight, but we have some really cool stuff that we're planning coming down the pipeline in the next few weeks. So you want to make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that bell, or get that alert to make sure you're the first to listen to it. So with that, let's get into it. Shadow Gov.
Well, first
busy
of
week.
all, yes, very busy week, but full disclosure, though, let's just set the record straight. Thank you to Badger State Resistance for allowing me to live rent-free in their head. No animosity towards them. I just think it's funny that they mentioned me in their latest podcast where they talked with Josh Shulman running for governor. So I was brought up as, you know, one of those sycophants for Robin Voss. So very curious. I have to listen to the rest of their show, of course, but I appreciate the little shout out at the end of there. But yeah, there's a lot of other stuff that happened this week. Recording a little bit early because everyone will be hearing this
After Labor Day.
But
for us, it's a little before.
It's a little before, so bear with us, but still a lot of stuff to talk about.
So first thing we want to get to is J.D. Vance. Just a quick hit on that. He was in La Crosse at Mid-City Steel talking about the big, beautiful bill. Always great to see him in Wisconsin. Hope he got some fishing in while he was here. I know he's an avid fisherman, and it's great to see him. Do want to talk about not just what he talked about with the big, beautiful bill, but one thing that really stood out to me was the questions he took from the press, where he was asked about dispatching of the National Guard in cities like Washington, D.C. and Chicago, and see if Wisconsin and Milwaukee would get the same treatment, because Washington, D.C. has been on probably the best run of low crime it's ever been, and no murders for like 12 straight days. I don't know if they're up to 13, 14 yet, or by the time people are hearing it.
Break the streak.
Oh, it's unfortunate. But they had 12 days without a murder.
Which is still a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible.
But, well, even more so, the mayor of D.C.
Yes.
kind of, I don't want to say she like praised Donald Trump.
She thanked the president, though.
She thanked the president for the extra help, the extra manpower, and alleviating some of the strains that the Metropolitan Police Department have had. You know, I mean, all police, I think, ever since George Floyd in the Summer of Love, the cop morale has obviously gone way down. People are getting out of Dodge. They don't have to deal with the political BS that the liberal big cities are spewing these days, which I don't blame them. But at the end of the day, there's still communities to police, and at least the mayor, which I don't think she's been exactly a friend of Donald Trump in the past.
Not at all.
Came out and said, you know, this actually helped us out. So this was tied in, obviously, because Matt Smith and members of the press were asking, you know, Vice President J.D. Vance, what would you do with Milwaukee? Would you go into Milwaukee? And of course he said, well, I guess I shouldn't say of course he said. I was a little bit surprised because they're going into Chicago, they're going into New York. But when they talked about Milwaukee, you know, J.D. Vance, and I'm paraphrasing, basically was, well, we'd love to come and help out Milwaukee, but we want to be asked.
Yes.
Which, of course, Donald Trump, being the authoritarian fascist that he is, typical fascist, usually, you know,
Is asking permission.
To go in. So I thought that was very interesting. I'm sure the Madison and Milwaukee libs are a little mad because they were hoping that they could, you know, rail about authoritarian police states for another week or two.
Right. No, when it comes to D.C., I'm certainly glad to see that the crime has taken such a big drop. You know, my family's talked about going out to D.C. That, you know, my kids are at an age where, you know, seeing those historic monuments and the halls of federal government would be a nice treat and a good opportunity for them. But I had that trepidation knowing that D.C., even the nice neighborhoods, are, you know, crime infested, and you're facing down a lot of, you know, difficult situations. And for DC to take that step, I feel confident, maybe booking a spring break there or something. And, I hope the same is true in Milwaukee. I know maybe it's because I know the city a bit more, but the crime in the city is localized to a few areas where, I don't go. But that being said, like you see crime is happening on State Street or Water Street and Third Street. So, I want to feel comfortable going down there for Bucks games, Marquette games, Admirals games, what have you. And I think the best way to do that is to have an increased police presence and having the National Guard there. So I hope it's the city of Milwaukee's on that line. But again, great to see JD and great to see him answer some of those questions.
And the last thing I'll say about this, and if Muriel Bowser,
yes.
I think that's her name, if she can come and humble herself and say thank you for the help.
Yep.
If she can do that, Mayor Cavalier Johnson of Milwaukee can do the same.
Frankly, I think if Chevy Johnson wants to make a run at a higher office, it might behoove him to bring in the National Guard. Because if you want to get people who aren't just the liberal base of the Democrat Party, doing that would be a great olive branch to that side. And, frankly, I think, like I said, there was that hit and run on Water Street that took place a couple weeks ago where it turns out that they kind of shrugged it off and, 2 women were in the hospital and it turned, there's going to be no charges. Like that could be his Willie Horton if he tries to go for a higher office. And I think, he should just say F it to his, liberals in Milwaukee that, don't see the crime because it's not happening on Brady Street during their brunch.
Except for it is happening on Brady Street now.
Yeah. So it might be the best thing for him to do it. I don't think he has the balls to do it.
I don't think so either. But again, I'm willing to be proven wrong because I certainly thought Muriel Bowser would never do that. So I guess it is possible. But what the best political message is? Success.
Yeah.
Success. You cannot argue with the numbers in DC. And, Milwaukee's had some issues. They just had their 100th homicide this year, Not a great, I know we're over halfway through the year, but still, I know homicides have been a little bit, higher this year than at this time last year. At least that's what they're reporting. But there's been a lot of talk from Milwaukee about policing, not having enough police. The mayor has said that he's allocated all this extra money for police, but hasn't had the numbers. They just haven't had the raw numbers to do it. Okay, here's an opportunity.
Yep.
The federal government says, look at what we've done. Here's the blueprint. We've done it before. We can do it again and replicate it across the country. All you got to do is ask.
Yep. Well, I hope he does.
So I sure hope he does, for the sake of not just Milwaukee, but the entire southeast Wisconsin.
He doesn't have the brass ones too, but I hope he does.
Yeah, I want to be proven wrong, honestly.
So, do want to shift gears a little. I want to talk about chicken. So, I used to work on assembly and state senate campaigns, and one of the areas it brought me to was to Wisconsin Rapids area to work for a fella named Scott Krug, who's a great legislator and a great friend of the program. While I was on his race, I covered miles and miles of rural doors. And areas I passed in these rural doors, there were areas that were native habitat for prairie chickens. But I, in my entire time driving through those areas, never once saw a prairie chicken. So I refuse to believe they exist. Now, I'm not a full-on birds aren't real.
The bird deniers.
I'm not a full-on bird denier, but I question the existence of prairie chickens. However, Badger Institute just had an article come out that I want to highlight about the prairie chickens and the land-eating solar industry. So in Portage County, the PSC has approved, I believe, a solar project that elevates a solar farm to what they call a solar plantation at 7,100 acres. It would be Wisconsin's largest. taking up as much land as the city of West Allis, filling 11 square miles with millions of solar panels. Add in an already approved solar project just to the north, and you're at about 10,000 acres of solar panels. So the size of Racine, or the size of Stevens Point, is going to be covered in solar panels.
That's disgusting.
I know. I'm totally with you on that one. The state already owns about 12,700 acres of prairie south of the planned solar site, though scattered pieces, and the Dane County Conservation League has been buying land in the area since the 1950s to preserve it for prairie chickens. Now owns about 4,300 acres. It's a measure of Vista Sands' solar size, and the league said nonetheless it has potential to destroy a 75-year commitment. So there are some neighbors in the area that are kind of against this project. I get it. You know, I can't understand destroying a Racine-sized piece of Wisconsin's God's country for Chinese solar panels.
It's just an eyesore too. I've always kind of stayed out of the argument between solar and wind, and because sure, it's like diversifying your investments, diversifying your source of energy. So I've always kind of been of the I've always supported nuclear. First of all, get that all up and running. I know there's a hell of a wait time to kind of get all the permitting and the process, and then finally building and then turning it on, taking like a decade or more to actually get that up and running. But between natural gas, coal, wind, solar, I've always been generally supportive of it all. But the more you read, the like for example, like the wind turbines.
Yeah.
I think the public's kind of, I feel like, is turning on wind turbines,
especially when they're built with plastic and the gears and the oil that are needed for it.
Yeah.
Don't replace the need for petroleum.
It seems like we're starting to come to the realization that like things like natural gas are pretty clean.
Yep.
And it doesn't have as much of an adverse effect on the environment. But the solar panels, I'll be quite honest, I don't know necessarily like, is it frying birds alive or something?
No, it's just destroying the habitat of an endangered species.
Yeah, and I think I really call it like Ted Kaczynski or something, but like the idea of this technology just like taking over these mass amounts. I mean, I don't think anyone's the size of Racine, the size of West Allis. Like, you look at it on a map and then just imagine that that is just solar panels and nothing else. Drive through West Allis and just imagine that you're driving through a field of solar panels for miles upon miles. And I'm just like, boy, there's got to be a different way to do this.
Yeah, that's a lot of habitat that's being destroyed. And you mentioned nuclear. So the project is billed as being able to generate 1,300 megawatts of power. That's the entire city.
That doesn't seem like that much.
That is just a notch more than Point Beach nuclear plant north of Two Rivers, for comparison. And the funny thing is, Point Beach doesn't go by their full potential capacity.
So they're running at it's like you're using 10% of your brain type of thing?
Yeah. So I just, again, prairie chickens apparently do exist, though I've never seen one. And, law of averages says the amount of time I was driving out there, I should have. But we're going to be seeing less and less of them if this Vista Sands solar project is approved by the left-wing PSC, Public Service Commission, and they'll be destroying their land at the, for Chinese solar panels that, will only operate a couple months out of the year because clouds and winter exist in Wisconsin.
It's very sad. And I'm not an expert in this area. Maybe we should do some more research on, I'm assuming they're phasing out a bunch of coal plants too. Then.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that they're phasing out coal plants, maybe phasing out natural gas plants in favor of more of this, which if, it's easy for the city folk to be like, oh, I love Wisconsin. I love that it's just so... I love the nature and stuff. Meanwhile, here's a giant solar farm to power your cities and stuff.
You go a little northwest of where we are right now and drive out through those country roads. And I do have that, that's the God's country vibe I get from that whole stretch of area, just rolling farmlands, cows, corn, classic barns. It's, it's beautiful. And, for something, again, the size of the city of Racine or the size of the city of West Allis being dropped into that full of nothing but solar panels.
Well, and to to also harp on the wind turbines, they're just an abomination to look at. I mean, it's just like it litters the entire. Oh, they're kind of symmetrical, and I was like, dude, stop.
And how often do you drive past them on a windy day when they're turned off?
It's not consistent. It's like solar panels. I mean, we have winter for half the year. It seems like sometimes. I'm sure that you don't get a lot of energy output when it has to be sunny. You can't have a rainy, overcast day. Whereas natural gas and coal, works all the time pretty much. But whatever. I'm sure we'll probably learn a hard lesson in 20 or 30 years, and we'll probably have to fix it. Oh well, another thing we'll have to fix down the line. But.
Yep. Well, speaking of conservation issues, did you see the Wisconsin Legislative Joint Audit Committee's audit of the DNR spending on hunting and fishing?
I don't want to know. I really don't want to know.
Well, got to credit Senator Eric Wimberger and Representative Robert Whitkey for evaluating the expenditures of the Department of Natural Resources made from the Fish and Wildlife account. So, shows to me that last August, the audit of the Wisconsin Fish and Wildlife account was requested by the Joint Legislative Committee. Now, I'm reading from the press release from Senator Wimberger and Representative Whitkey. So it was requested by Joint Legislative Audit Committee. The audit was ordered in response to the DNR projection that the account will have a $16 million deficit despite an infusion of $25 million included in the 23-25 state biennial budget. The Fish and Wildlife account is funded primarily from hunting and fishing user fees, so the licenses. In the report, the Legislative Audit Bureau found that only $46.3 million, or less than half, of the $92.9 million of state revenue was spent on activities that primarily benefit hunters and anglers. This is down from $68.2 million that was spent in 2006, which was 57%. So not only are they not spending the money on what they're supposed to, they're running up a deficit. So it sounds like they're just borrowing from this account to fund other projects and
robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Right. And if you know much about the DNR, you know that there's basically two DNRs. There's the good one that enforces hunting and fishing regulation. And there's the bad one that says if you have a cattail growing in a tiny little mossy pond, that
can't touch it.
Exactly. That it's untouchable acreage for wetlands and nothing can be developed on it. And again, the bureaucratic half of the DNR. And so the bureaucratic half looks like it's sucking out money from this other half.
They're like, let's take advantage of, Wisconsin's outdoorsmen, and let's just use it to fund all of our little pet projects that we want to do, or all the little liberal fantasy projects that they want to do with that money. And of course, it's getting worse over time, basically, is what they're saying. They said it was $46.3 million, which was just under half of the state revenue, whereas it's down from $68 million when it was 57% of the revenue. So they're just, well, what are they going to do? They're going to continue to take from this until there's nothing left? So these audits usually are just depressing to me because it just, it further degrades my faith in the bureaucracy, which I already had not a whole lot of faith in to begin with.
Yeah, so I believe it was Senator Felskowski. Yeah, so I found her press release that said it was egregious acts of mismanagement coming out of our DNR. From shuttering the trout rearing programs across the state and dumping those fish into streams where they'll never survive, failing on our walleye stocking numbers, and turning a blind eye to the wolf population that's wreaking havoc on Wisconsin, ignoring aquatic invasive species on our lakes, the department has shown a complete lack of ability to manage its resources, and this is just another part of that. So, yes, and I think what Legislative Audit Bureau shows is the enormous gap between what can be done with like a Doge style, program to audit all this and what's actually going on. Because unfortunately, and I think we see this play out more and more, is, even when, joint finance goes through the budget, and, something we talked about months ago, and Evers shuttered that DHS program to employ seniors, money goes to a state agency and it's basically a black hole after that. And what we need is
Yeah.
some real actual like dollar for dollar transparency so we can get Doge and we can empower the GOAT committee here in Wisconsin to be able to take a look at more of these things because they're not being able to see where this money is going. And again, Senator Felskowski just hit on a bunch of stuff that I had never heard about before she mentioned it. And I feel like I'm an insider, that pays attention to the stuff, but DNR is getting away with a lot of crap.
Well, we need a Republican governor.
Yeah.
We need someone that can appoint department heads.
Yeah.
That can actually dig into this. They talk about entrenched bureaucracy in Washington. I'm sure there's part of it. I'm sure that there's a lot of great public servants in Wisconsin that do their job, but I also think that there's plenty of entrenched people that, Tony Evers has been governor for, it'll be 8 years, 2 terms. There's plenty of time for people to
let's be
get
clear.
entrenched like a tick. And
there's
there's
plenty of liberals, and they could even be well-meaning liberals. They could even be Democrats that aren't really liberal, that will apply for jobs in the public sector in the state of Wisconsin who really don't care what the governor is, but they're still going to do things by their worldview, which is a left-leaning worldview.
Yes.
So even if you have, Josh Schoeman, Tom Tiffany, or even Bill Berrien as the next governor, folks are, the state agencies are still going to be hiring people who are probably of a left-wing bend. And, maybe one of the things we need to see out of the next governor is someone that's going to commit to making sure that even the bureaucrats have a conservative bend to them as much as possible.
Well, winning the governorship is people, I know I just said, we need to win the governorship.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's like half the battle.
Yeah.
Trump winning was great, but the other half of the battle is actually executing the plan.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a lot of work. And, I'm no expert, and, I'm sure that that's one thing we should have on is maybe some former Wisconsin department people that maybe experienced this.
Yes.
Or at least can, slightly unrelated, but I know Dan Lennington from Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty actually was just talking on Twitter earlier this week about the forgery charges against the Trump lawyer here in Wisconsin. He's like, well, I actually did this. I actually charged these when I worked at DOJ. And basically, saying Josh Call is full of it and the DOJ is full of it.
Sure.
Having experiences like that to call out now, not that I know someone, I don't have a Rolodex of someone within the DNR or former DNR that could give insight into this, although that'd be great if we did. That could give us some more insight on that. But it's a shame that we'll have to do a legislative audit. It takes, I'm sure, months to do. We get the information, we do the press release. It goes out into the ether. And we just kind of have to wait.
Having a lazy press corps doesn't help. We might have, and I've yet to be proven correct or incorrect, that we might have a couple of decent political journalists, but they're not going to, dig in on a long form, multi-part story about what DNR is doing wrong. But having, overall lazy journalists at the Journal Sentinel who don't really care about any of this and only care about, Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift's marriage.
Lord have mercy.
Although
if they have a baby together, that we will see a baby boom that we have never seen since probably.
I think the only other person that can trigger that big of a baby boom is JD Vance and his wife Usha.
I'm going to disagree just because Taylor Swift is just a cultural phenomenon that transcends political divisions. And how many, I could just see how many women are like, I want to be pregnant when Taylor is pregnant. And I swear to you, there are a lot of people that probably just think like that, which is kind of shallow, but honestly, if that's what gets more people to have kids.
I didn't know you were such a Swiftie.
I'm not necessarily I'm not a Swiftie. That's the thing. I'm more of a Kesha guy, but that's guilty pleasure music. That being said, yes, it would be a baby boom. But
going back to this original topic, I want to believe that there are still people, even on the Democrat side, who would see the black hole that the state throws money at state agencies and want more transparency. You know, the left is always harped on transparency.
They harp on transparency, but do they really believe it?
This would be a great chance to, put their money where their mouth is and put some,
go with a no, though.
Create some transparency at these state agencies and their spending. Because, again, Doge or GOAT here in the state can't do their job when the only way to get information from a state agency is through a legislative audit report. And that's, information that is months old. And you have, one committee that's going to push on it, and then they give a couple of suggestions, and then that's going to be it. Like, we're not going to see any change at DNR unless we have, unless we have a new governor. But even still, I want to believe that there's decent people on the Democrat side who want transparency in spending. Well, even though so they can spend more money, but at least they can, say like we're doing the right thing, or we know exactly where this money's going.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. One thing is that I think probably the exact opposite is going to happen because the departments now feel empowered because of this lawsuit where they don't have to abide by the Joint Committee on Rules and Regulations. I think they're going to be empowered to be even less transparent, be even less forthcoming, because they're Tony Evers has basically given them a free ticket to do whatever the heck they want. So this is just another piece of the puzzle where they don't really have to, again, rob one part of the DNR budget to pay for another part of the DNR budget. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but I'm sure it's only going to get worse before it gets better, which again, it starts with a Republican governor, Republican legislature, and then we go from there.
Well, we should talk about what the legislature and the Dems are putting out regarding bills. Recently, the Wisconsin Legislative Socialist Caucus and allies released the Keeping Families Together package to stop Trump and ICE authoritarian overreach. So their press release came out, and they put together a package of bills that would fund immigration defense work, prevent government actors from acting while masked or unidentified, prohibit the use of state, county, or city facilities for detaining people solely based on their immigration status, and ban agreements appropriating local government resources for immigration enforcement, among other protections. So this was introduced by Ryan Clancy, Francesca Hong, Darren Madison, and Christian Phelps, the avowed labeled socialists, who seem to, once you peel this back, seem to find themselves on the 20 side of some 80-20 issues regarding immigration.
Well, it's unbelievable. It's actually completely believable when you think that, yes, it's the Socialist Caucus. But a couple thoughts here. These bills are nothing new. This is kind of reacting to some of the rhetoric that we've heard nationwide. Of course, they're mad that ICE agents are covering their faces because they keep on getting doxxed or their families threatened, which has been verified. There was actually, I found it the other day, there's a website where, I don't know if it's still up, but there was a website where they were just listing ICE officers and just say, can you identify this person, essentially, so that they could, of course, give them a nice thank you letter and say thank you for your service. So that's, of course, what they were asking for their address, their home address, where their kids go to school, that kind of type of thing. And they, of course, said that violating the provision would be a criminal act. So instead of locking up actual criminals, they want to criminalize.
They want to turn police on. How would you do that? You just turn police on each other.
It's asinine. It's stupid, which is why it's perfect for the Socialist Caucus. Along with that, basically requiring local governments, state governments, you can't coordinate with ICE. You can't do anything with ICE. Basically, and of course being detained for the sole basis being that they're unlawfully present in the United States. So this is all par for the course. Okay, nothing of this should surprise anyone, which is why it's perfect for the Republicans to actually take an opportunity here.
Yes.
Now this is now based off of the press conference here. I was looking at a picture from Representative Francesca Hong potential gubernatorial candidate as well. And, this press conference, although you can't really tell who's all there, but maybe there was a few people, but there's a common trend with these Democrat press conferences is that they don't always get a ton of coverage. No, I mean, they do, but because there's some people that have to, there's state reporters that do, but it seems like they don't always get as much coverage as they should. I think that's in part because most reporters believe that these bills are, in political sense, DOA, dead on arrival. Well, I think we should give the media, because they're often lazy and you have to do their job for them, give them a bone.
Yep.
Give them a bone.
100%.
Let the Republicans call these bills up in committee. Let them, or even better yet, I'm pretty sure you can just take a proposal and just bring it right to the floor.
Well, they do. The Dems try to do this all the time. And it's called a pulling motion, where they try to pull it out of a committee and bring it to the floor. That's one of the stall tactics they use regularly when they want to debate other bills on the floor. They try to do this thing. It's a stall tactic, so they can get on Wisconsin Eye. They can give their 2-minute speech. They can clip that and put it into fundraising and whatnot. But otherwise, it's just a stupid procedural thing that they can spend time doing and waste Republicans' time on the floor. But I 100% agree with you. I think it's something that Republicans should do more often, is take these 80-20 ideas that, again, the Democrats are on the 20% side of, that are just, again, asinine, out of touch with reality, and make them vote for them. The Republicans should make the Democrats go on the record about every stupid idea they come up with. Force them to either side with the socialists or side with reality.
And then hope that they vote with the socialists, because then it'll fracture their own party.
Exactly.
And, I'm not saying we do this with every single Democrat bill. I'm sure there's some real stinkers out there.
Yes.
But this is an easy one. The Democrats are clearly, the Socialist Caucus are the true believers. There might be some. I think most Democrats in the caucus would probably agree with this bill.
Yeah.
But there might be those 1, 2, 3, maybe more that are in a swing district that would probably be taking a tough vote by supporting one or a couple of these bills. And I mean, it's going to fail. No Republican would ever vote for this.
No.
So just, very easily get some people on the record. And I think we should, I'll publicly, I'm not really a public figure, but I'll push for this.
Yes.
I think we should have a hearing as soon as possible. I mean,
schedule them for a vote.
Schedule them for a vote. Let the Dems, wind them up.
Yep.
And one thing that was also mentioned by at least Francesca Hong, I guess it wasn't mentioned, but they also had a couple groups there, in support, and one was the Voces de la Frontera head person there, and Voces de la Frontera is a radical immigrant, and I put that in quotation marks, organization which just seeks to basically get driver's license for illegals. That's their main thing. They do it at, that's I think their main issue, among other things, advocating for illegal immigrants or illegal aliens. So not surprised that they were there. But imagine a floor session where you're passing this and you have Voces de la Frontera in the gallery, protesting in the hallways. Well, obviously they'd be advocating for it. And so the Democrats would probably be, the few on the edge would have to potentially break with their party. And I just think the optics alone would be fantastic. So I think 100%. I'm all for this political act.
We have a lot of folks that, staff legislative offices in the Capitol that I think listen to our program with some regularity. And I hope they're going to hear us and then maybe go talk to their boss and pitch as an idea. Because, the fact is, Republicans are, there's a lot of doomers right now about the prospects of holding both branches of the legislature, both chambers of the legislature, and winning the governorship this next cycle. I know traditionally it's hard when the party of the president doesn't make gains rarely, if ever, at midterm elections. So I understand that, there's the deck might be stacked against us, even though what the Trump administration doing right now is absolutely fabulous, and I think might break the mold in some states. But I know we've got a lot of tough races that are going to come up. We've got a lot of tough, we got a lot of seats that are 50-50 or lean Dem that are being held by Dems that we could pick up. And when you put people on the 20 side of an 80-20 issue, when you put them against working Wisconsinites and in favor of illegal immigrants, it should make it an easy way to get that vote. Now, what I don't know of is I think this is a brilliant idea. I don't know how many state members of the state assembly and state senate have the fortitude to go through with this, because I've been in those committee hearings before where I've seen a chairman get cold feet about a bill because the hearing was held in Madison and a bunch of libs came to the hearing and they got cold feet. But I would love to see the Republicans play some hardball, do some outside the box thinking when it comes to how we need to message and how we need to, again, get these people on the record on these ridiculous ideas and use it against them in a campaign. So I think this is a great opportunity. I know, at least one Wisconsin Republican has come out against these bills, which again makes a whole lot of sense. Clint Moses, called the Keeping Families Together package, said it would funnel taxpayer dollars into immigration defense, block state, county, and city officials from detaining individuals based on immigration status, and tie the hands of local governments working with federal immigration enforcement. It's nothing more than a blueprint for turning Wisconsin into a sanctuary state at the expense of hardworking Wisconsinites. He is not wrong.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I kind of forgot to mention that one of the bills would actually direct state government to award grants to organizations that provide legal services related to immigration and allowing counties to provide payments to organizations for legal services. They want your tax dollars to go to essentially be funneled to left-wing nonprofits for free legal services for illegals.
Yep.
That's insane.
Yep.
So, I mean, the taxpayer, first of all, I know that a lot of the socialists or, the illegals defenders say, oh, well, they don't pay taxes or they do pay taxes. Or sorry, I should say they do pay taxes, but they don't receive any of the benefits, which is a lie. They do take some benefits, especially a lot of public benefits. And a lot of illegals, I'm sure, are paid under the table because it's illegal, which they're not then paying taxes on that. So, but they, of course, want to shovel money to defend them.
Yep.
Not for American citizens. They want to shovel your tax dollars.
I mean, we just saw Doge at the federal level. We just saw Doge go through and gut the taxpayer to left-wing NGO to Democrat Party pipeline.
Oh, we need to stop that.
So
bad.
This would create that same pipeline for illegal immigrants in the state. And I'm going to read this one from on X that I found. From Immigrant Crimes is the name of the X account. These are the type of people that the Democrats want to give free legal services to and not and allow into your community against the wishes of federal and law enforcement. So last month, Belliker David Cruz Lagos was charged with sexual assault of a child or sexual intercourse with a child 16 years or older. He has an immigrant detainer holder now. So that detainer would go away under Francesca Hong, Ryan Clancy, and Christian Phelps' bill. So police accused him of sexually assaulting 3 different juvenile victims on separate occasions. Court records show Cruz Lagos received citations for driving without a license in January. So these are the type of people that the Democrats want to provide free legal resources to. They want them to run free in your communities. And, anyone with half a brain would say that we can't have it. So,
well, one thing this is kind of tangential, but so illegals can't have driver's license at all in Wisconsin. And Voces de la Frontera has been very vocal about that. The Democrats, yada, yada, yada. But they can't own licenses. So this guy gets pulled over, doesn't have a license.
should be a red flag right there.
Yeah, it should be a red flag right there, of course. Gets a citation. Do they, I mean, I don't know what Dane County or what they're, do they just forgive those tickets? Like, of course, they're a sanctuary county. They're not going to charge this. They're not actually going to enforce the penalty. So essentially, it's a meaningless charge.
Sure.
That being said, this person, now, I understand that, of all the crimes, additional crimes that they're committing, driving without a license isn't the most heinous. Obviously, I'm not an idiot, but still, I mean, call me extreme, but I'm pretty sure under the Republican legislation that they passed earlier this year, it said that the counties have to comply with the federal immigration detainers or face blowback, or monetary, blowback. That being said, I guess in theory, you could have a situation where this guy is pulled over, doesn't have a license. They would have to potentially, if they were conducting a questionnaire on what his immigration status was, and it was determined that he wasn't illegal, well, then they would have to hold him, and this person would have potentially been deported. Of course, Dane County doesn't honor those, but this happened in January,
sure.
And this just happened, last month?
Yeah.
So is what the post said?
So he went from those crimes in January, the driving without a license or without insurance.
So he could have been, in theory, if everything were to go correctly, he could have been deported, he could have been gone, and he wouldn't have been charged with these crimes. He wouldn't have been a burden on the taxpayers of Wisconsin, and we wouldn't have to be reading this disgusting CCAP file where he's, second and third degree assaulting of a child.
Yeah.
So
he's racking up those felony charges.
So get him out of here. Get him out of here.
Yep. I do want to continue our crime conversation. When folks will be listening to this, is about a week ago now that a left-wing trans terrorist shot up a church in Minneapolis. And, I don't necessarily want to rehash the whole shooting that Robert Westman, who went by Robin, did and perpetrated. But I do want to talk about the way that a couple of Wisconsin Democrats have reacted to this. And, I was offended on multiple different levels when Jacob Fry basically said, F your prayers, those don't work, we need to go on, and we need to do, quote unquote, do something. Now, got to credit Senator Wongard, who walked through all of the quote unquote common sense gun laws that the left has called for, even though they didn't prevent this tragedy. In Minnesota right now, you have universal background checks. There are red flag laws, and I want to get to those in a second. There is secure storage. There's bump stock bans. There's auto switches, a K-12 gun-free zone, open carry regulation, the ability to deny purchase. There's a waiting period, and I think there's actually another one on ghost guns that they've outlawed as well. So want to add one of those to Senator Wongard's post, that Minnesota has done everything that a left-leaning state can do.
That's the wish list.
Yeah.
That's like the entire, to the Democrats in Minnesota's credit.
Yeah.
When they talk about gun control, this is what they did it all.
Yes.
I mean, so it was funny. It wasn't funny at all, actually. I was, Dan Schaefer, our favorite Democrat of the program, tweeted something about how, nothing's going to change, no public policy is going to come out of this, and the madness will continue and more people will die as a result. And I said, Dan, what do you mean? This happened in minutes. First of all, I understand that school shootings happen everywhere. Mm-hmm. Like this isn't just a red or a blue state thing. It happens in red communities. It happens in liberal communities. But this happened in Minnesota, where I'm assuming that some of the gun laws, which you just read, I'm sure California has those. I don't know. I'm not an expert on which has the most extreme gun laws. I'm sure California is up there. But
the New England states are all on that side of the gun laws too.
Yeah, so I'm just confused. Well, what is this? Is there a silver bullet? And obviously, I don't think the Democrats will even. I think even the Democrats will admit, well, this won't catch everything.
Yeah.
Well, then what is the solution? Just to ban all guns, which I think most of them would probably agree with.
Yes.
Which obviously is just. I mean, there's more guns than there are people in the United States.
Yeah. They would say that, we need to ban every gun, or they'll say that, well, this was a quote unquote assault looking rifle. Now we could go into a whole conversation on how replacing a couple parts on an AR-15 will make it go from an assault-looking military-style weapon to, your grandpa's hunting rifle. But you say, oh, okay, well, we got to ban those. Well, then, it happens that shotguns is one of the next ones that perpetrate. And I think the guy, I'm going to say he's a guy. I'm going to dead name the fuck out of this piece of shit. Robert had a shotgun with him. Say, okay, well, we got to ban shotguns. Well, then you got to say, well, we got to ban pistols because the next one will be done with a pistol. And then, well, you look at what London did. They got everything banned. Then they started banning, and they started banning knives. And now, you can be thrown in jail for any number of unreasonable reasons.
Well, then they had acid attacks.
Yeah, and people with hate in their hearts, and
they'll find a way.
You can't legislate out the hate that people have in their hearts, and they will find a way. Like you said, it'll be a car, it'll be a pipe bomb, it'll be anything. But I do want to touch on one thing. You look at the people that are perpetrating these acts. The one in Waukesha that was thankfully stopped
by an SRO officer.
Yes. Was a trans girl. Thought she was a boy. You have the Minnesota shooting, trans. The Nashville shooter, trans. In fact, I think 6 or so of the last school shootings or church shootings at school were trans. I'm going to propose that we actually have to have a red flag law, and we need to ban trans people from owning firearms. If you want to get at this, and you want to say we got to ban firearms, let's ban them for the people who are committing these acts, and those are trans people. And those are people that are pumped up on a ridiculous amount of hormones, throwing their bodies completely out of whack, who have these delusions about what gender they are or what gender they pretend to be, who are being fed misinformation by TikTok and Instagram. And probably they have therapists that are giving in to every one of their freaking delusions. Those people I don't feel safe around those people if they own firearms. I mean, you've seen it. There's some he, she, it thing walking around the state capitol who has I don't know if it's a pretend AK-47 or a real one or one that's made up to look up.
It's real.
That person does not have the mental faculties and the correct brain chemistry to own a firearm. So what we need to do, again, ban trans people from owning firearms. Go.
So there's there's a reason why we shouldn't allow trans people in the military to then have, someone that has their mental faculties are not all the way there, and then we give them a firearm.
Exactly. And
I stating, they don't do, the military tries to phase out people that have that have mental issues to begin with. Now, I'm not an expert on what they do or the testing that they do, so I can't say they phase out all these people because of all these issues, but I know that they do testing for that.
When you have studies showing that 81%, and this is a UCLA School of Law study, when you have 81% of transgender adults, not just this isn't kids, but this is adults, have thought about suicide, and 42% that have attempted it, those people aren't right in the head. In other situations, again, we don't allow people with certain mental defects to own firearms. It's Second Amendment, absolutists probably not going to like my opinion. That's fine. I'm willing to die on this hill and say that if 81% have suicidal thoughts, and this is what's happening. These people that are committing these acts are suicidal. They just want to make a spectacle of it because they've been ingrained with left-wing indoctrination on top of the trans radical ideologies that are being forced upon them. It should be frightening. And again, the only way to stop it is to prevent them from having firearms. And then go after, and if they're kids that are doing this, if they're under 18 or, right in that age, go after their parents because their parents are liable because they're the ones that acquiesced to this mental illness that they have and pretended to make the reality that they think they have actual, and forcing it on the rest of us is forcing violence on normal Americans.
So there was a couple things so I am more of a Second Amendment absolutist. I am definitely more on that end of the spectrum. That being said, I think there's ways that you could do this that really would be fairly easy. First of all, I think, well, not that, of course, the people that commit these crimes are extremely deranged and it should be prevented as much as possible. I think most of the time, though, that these individuals are manipulated by either social media, counselors, doctors, sometimes their parents, because their parents think of them as some pet project, virtue signaling.
Not just a pet project. They think of them as their poodle, their bread.
It's a status symbol.
Yes. Do you know, you go into Shorewood right now, you go into these liberal communities, and if your kid is straight and white, you have to apologize. Mm-hmm. Like, you say that in hushed tones, like, oh, what's your son like now? Well, he's straight. And he wants to play football. And we're trying so hard to make him believe.
If they're queer.
Yeah. You just got to throw the label on it. And the fact is, when you have, like a third of a class in Shorewood High School being, queer or gender nonconformist and furries and, all these other things, like, you feel like you want to be part of that again, or you have parents that want you to be part of that so they can win their Karen White Wine Club Wednesdays.
Well, I think it would be even easier than just doing a red flag law. I think it'd be just easier. If you go to counseling, if you have any kind of counseling for gender dysphoria, you can't own a firearm.
Easy.
Or
you go to a judge and you say, I want to change my name to a female name. Boom. The only loss of firearms.
Yeah. I always hesitate on because sometimes who's determining that? But I think would be go even a step farther, which you wouldn't have to do that, is that you wouldn't even have to do a red flag law for these individuals, is if you penalized the hell out of the doctors that do this. Basically saying, if you prescribe these extremely hormone altering hormones and someone does something as a result, you're held liable.
It's true. Not just the parents that should be held liable, but the doctors that perform the procedures, the doctors that are prescribing these pills.
Put the onus on them.
Yes.
And maybe they will second guess what they're doing.
Yeah.
And because it comes on them. I mean, imagine the Minnesota shooter situation where the doctor is held liable for everything that person did.
Yeah. 100% behind that.
Because I honestly, what I see in with the trans stuff is I see children being manipulated. Now, obviously, there's tons of trans people that are in their 40s and 50s that are just insane. And I still remember back in 2018 when I first came across the trans stuff, and it was some 50-year-old that left his family and wanted to pretend to be a 6-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Oh, just disgusting. But that being said, I think a lot of these, especially because the explosion of people that identify as trans has exploded exponentially in the last couple of years. It's a lot of social media contagion, a lot of encouragement from, like I said, teachers or counselors or people that have, feel like they have an obligation to help these kids determine their sexuality, which is just disgusting to begin with. A lot of that is the kids are being manipulated. So I try not to blame them as much as I can. For the most part, I just want to blame the people that have the most responsibility in these things. The kids certainly have some blame to have in this, but they were pushed to a place. And frankly, and a conversation that Democrats probably don't want to have is and I believe is a spiritual element here at play. I mean, not that I want to publish the manifesto or anything, or, there's plenty of pictures online. But, there was some drawings on there, and there was, of course, maybe some kids just being edgy and, scribbling the devil. But very weird. He was writing everything in Cyrillic, Russian. And, some of the things he was saying just seemed very demonic and demonically possessed. And I think ultimately you have these kids like the Columbine. They were kind of outcasts, maybe make fun of loners. You have trans people that are kind of the similar thing.
I mean, it's the low-hanging fruit for the doctors and psychologists and the
but
people
it plays
who
together.
Right, the people who gravitate to Reddit and other, like, Reddit is an absolute cesspool.
Oh, it's so
and
bad.
if I win the Powerball, I'd buy every stock in Reddit that I can just to shut it down.
Delete it.
Yeah,
you don't want to look at the comments that came out after this too.
When you get radicalized by whether it's Reddit, whether it's TikTok, but when your algorithm kicks those things to you as a 13-year-old, you might go down this path. And like you said, the people who are responsible for this beyond the person actually committing the act are the parents and doctors, psychologists, what have you, who are right there perpetuating this false reality that they've let the guy create.
We need a federal ban on gender affirming care, which I don't even want to call it gender affirming care. It's just such a bad word.
Trans butchering,
yes,
gender mutilation. We all about a decade, maybe 15 years ago, we all got up in arms about Africans doing genital mutilation, and maybe we should be more up in arms about this.
That was a whole thing.
Yeah,
and it draws me back to the Oconomowoc doctor, who is a man who now identifies as a woman that specializes in, first of all, being a trans doctor, as well as having a specialty in genital mutilation.
Yep.
So that's ironic.
Yeah. But you touched on something a little bit, and that's the fact is that so many people on the left have replaced genuine faith in a higher power, in a savior, with the religion, the death cult religion of the modern Democratic Party, which is, climate change, transgenderism, and, pro-Hamas terrorism. Like, all of those have constituencies within the modern Democratic Party.
Well, and one of the smartest things that someone ever said, and of course it wasn't me that said this, but I'll gladly steal it, is that there will be always something that rules. There is the coexist bumper sticker ideology is fake and gay. It's not real. It is a complete psyop. Something will always rule at the end of the day. Whether, and if you can't criticize it, that means it rules over you. So in polite society, we can't criticize the LGBTQ, although the Overton window is slightly shifting on that. But certainly during the Biden years, it felt like they were a protected class. They were untouchable. And yes, the religion of the left is moral relativism and the rainbow flag. It is their religion. They have their own sacrileges. They have their own rituals. They're just slightly different than the normal ones.
And the sad part is that's true even of houses of worship that quote unquote call themselves Christian. And, like ELCA or Unitarian Universalist, like those are fake, manipulated, warped versions. Versions of Christianity. But I do want to touch on one thing, and that's probably the worst timed article that came out of the recombobulation area. Now, it says by Dan Schaefer, and if you read it in his voice, it actually becomes even funnier. But I believe it was written by a person named Emily Mills, who claims to be transgender, looks more butch or more masculine than Dan Schaefer is, which, I don't know, 60% chance she's going to take that as a compliment if she hears this. But she wrote about Wisconsin needing a candidate for governor who will defend LGBTQ people. And this is, one of those situations that's been so warped in that, 20 years ago, it was, we just want to have marriage equality. We just want to be normal. And then it became, bake the fucking cake or we'll destroy your business.
Which they still went after that guy.
Yeah.
They went in, I mean, that guy's been fighting lawsuits for a decade.
Right. And now it's, call us by our proper pronouns. And even more so, it's, we'll kill you if we don't if you don't call us by our proper pronouns. But
or they'll kill themselves if you don't. If you don't call us by our proper pronouns.
Emily wrote this long scribe about how, she really hopes that we have an opportunity to nominate and elect someone who will fight for all Wisconsinites, blah, blah, blah. Urban, suburban, rural, blah, blah, blah. But including queer, trans, and straight or cisgender people. Speaking of that, I'm terrified. The reason I'm terrified is that the vacuum left in Evers' wake leaves a lot of room for things to go wrong in a way that could directly hurt people, particularly those who remember already vulnerable or targeted communities. Again, when you make yourself a victim, you create this victim status for you, becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, there's more I wish he'd be able to do throughout his time as governor. He was at least a reliable bulwark against the excess of right-wing's anti-LGBTQ crusade. Now, she goes on, and I want to talk about a couple things, or maybe I don't know. She doesn't list her pronouns, even though she claims to be trans. She calls it infuriating that Democrats are parroting the very same lies and misdirections about trans people in an effort to hope score political points. Major figures in the party right now are either towing the transphobic line or all out on it. And she links to quotes from Pete Buttigieg or Gavin Newsom, who she calls wrong-headed and dangerous. Now, I would never think that Pete Buttigieg or Gavin Newsom are on the wrong side of this, but let me tell you about the article she links to in The Advocate about Pete Buttigieg, where he weighs in on fairness of transgender kids playing in sports. So again, we've gone from we just want to get married now to I want to beat your, I'm a guy and I want to
demand.
Yeah, and I demand to beat your kid in a sport.
Which, to anyone, first of all, I'd like to say, for all of those out there of us that were on the marriage equality quote unquote fight. We all said that this is the slippery slope, that it's not going to end here.
Yeah.
And their argument was, well, we just want to get married. We just want the tax benefits. It was never going to end there. And, even some, I don't, normal gays, if you will, you've lost the plot when even some of the normal gays are like, guys, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You're even losing some of your own.
Yeah. And that's, 100% about,
gays against groomers. Now, I have my own personal beliefs where I don't agree that gay marriage is a thing. But I'm willing to have an ally in the fight. Gays against groomers, is explicitly basically against the trans community because they feel like they've gone so far left with this. And to be honest, it was always going to go here. They don't know how to stop. So
and, I want to read this paragraph because again, it shows the how divorced this part of the political left is from reality. Is Governor Evers provided a crucial firewall against the worst abuses of the current right-wing agenda against LGBTQ people. What do you think is in that right-wing agenda? Rights that radiate out to impact everyone. He blocked attempts to ban trans youth from accessing, these are her words, medically necessary gender-affirming care. Now, it's never medically necessary. And it's not gender-affirming. It's gender-destroying, but okay. Bans trans and gender non-conforming kids from joining sports teams that align with their identities. Now, again, 99% of kids that are doing that are boys that are playing down to girls level because they're just people who suck at golf that want to hit from the women's tees.
Yeah. I mean, there's very rare instances where the females are going into the male.
Yeah, that never happens.
There's got to be like a one-off, right?
I would love to see proof of that, but
I'm not disagreeing, but there's the classic saying, there are no absolutes.
Yeah.
While you state that an absolute, there is no absolutes. So I'm just saying, I'm being devil's advocate.
Yeah.
There might be one.
Like I said, I'm so glad we're seeing the pushback on this, that any reasonable person needs to look at the way that boys are dominating women's sports and know that there's something inherently anti-competitive and completely lacks any sportsmanship to play down at that level. And again, to physically dominate opponents in such a frightening way that, you're causing major injury to these people.
Well, one thing I do want to credit the Republican Party for doing is they actually, this is kind of a broader discussion on LGBTQ stuff. The Republican Party and the conservative movement in general, I would say, not necessarily the Republican Party, but that's included too, have successfully pushed back on this culture war issue. I'm not saying we won this issue, but the polling is on our side. The public is on our side for the most part, and we still have lots of work to go. But it seemed like 2018, 2020, 2022, it felt like we were kind of losing the rope a little bit. The rope, we were slipping, and we were dangerously close to basically allowing the left to monopolize a culture war issue, and like they did kind of with abortion, like they did with marriage equality. They were going to do the same thing with the trans stuff. And then there's always going to be another thing. I still remember it like it was yesterday. I was in college. I have a very good friend who happens to be just a communist. But I don't think he was as communist when I was in college, but certainly after college, he was definitely a communist. He definitely told me, he told me after January 6th, he's like, I was so proud of the Republicans. I just wish it was my comrades instead. That kind of level. But I still remember we were arguing because this is, boy, I don't even remember how long ago it was, but we were arguing about the marriage equality debate. And I said, well, where does it stop? When is it enough?
Yep.
When is the end goal? And I said, well, and I tongue in cheek said, well, pedophilia, and he's like, oh, absolutely not. We'll never do that. Well, and then of course you have like the whole map thing, and obviously we understand that there is. I'm not saying it's a wide push for it, but there is definitely pushes by some to normalize it.
Yeah, it's pushes by people who aren't primarily on Reddit.
Yeah, it's not. It's kind of left just the pure online scene. So, needless to say, the progressive movement is, progress for the sake of progress. They'll find some other banner. If they were to plant the flag with the transgenderism like they did with the marriage equality, where they won that culture war and they won the trans one, they would find something else to corrupt. They would find something else that is too traditional, and we can't adhere to that, and they would try to change that.
There was, I thank God for President Trump and the Republican Congress, because something pre-2018, I can't put my finger on the exact date, but there was sometime in that post-16, 17 era that became this extreme cultural and societal rot that captured most institutions beyond the normal liberalism that was in them, from, companies and their posts on, on social issues, and sports, and of course Hollywood, and the liberal media, that I feel like we are finally coming out of. That I think the Democrats are going to feel soon like they're the last Japanese soldier in an island in the Philippines in the near future, when most people wake up from that destructive force that overtook so many for the past, for that eight-ish year period. And I feel like we're really coming out of it. You see the Sydney Sweeney's jeans thing, and you feel like we're so back, and you see the failure of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs picture. Makes me think like that was like the last gasp of the normalcy that was that institutional rot that we had.
I wish I was optimistic as you are. Well, I think we've got some good wins under our belt, and I will not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, which I am very happy with a lot of the stuff, and we are pushing the culture. The Overton window is shifting a little bit. Still have more work to do.
Oh, plenty more work.
That being said,
yeah.
And this will be my last statement, because now we're getting a little philosophical here.
And and let me be clear, we're recording this at a time where it is not prudent for us to be knocking back bourbon.
Yeah.
So we're doing this stone sober.
Yeah.
Hope the folks at home are enjoying this.
Yeah. Unlike last week. At least for myself. That being said, all of these good wins are good. They are good. Let that be said. I hope we continue with those wins. But ultimately, a movement, it can be a flash in the pan. MAGA technically has only been around for like a decade type of thing. Who knows? Will it be around in another decade? There is one institution that has been around much, much longer than MAGA and will be around much, much longer after MAGA that would solve a lot of our cultural problems. And that's, of course, returning to Christ, of course, and going to church and having a mass revival, having a great awakening 2.0 of people returning back to kind of, the founding stock of the country why did they leave England? They were persecuted Protestants, and kind of returning back to that mindset a little bit and having this mass revival of people turning back to Christ would solve a lot of our cultural issues outright.
Well, I know.
But that is obviously very helpful thinking, but any political movement will eventually go to the wayside. They always do. The institution of the church and religion has lived on for thousands of years and will continue to do so, which is why the American experiment has lasted for so long. The lefties will be mad about that, but yes, America was founded on Christian values and as a Christian country. Freedom from religion, the state. Literally, this isn't hard. You look at if you just read the founders' words, if you think that that moral relativism is what the country was founded on, I'm sorry to hate to break it to you, but read a history book that was written before 1945, and you'll find that the way that the people talked about this country was much different. So, but yes, but then again, yes, everything that we're doing now is good.
There is one last thing I want to touch on, and I know for us, we regularly dip our toes in telling Republicans in the legislature what should be done. In fact, we did it for quite a bit of time tonight. I just hope that the people reading this Emily Mills article on the left do the same thing, because I don't feel like our opinions are necessarily outside the bounds of what normal conservatism is, or normal MAGA conservatism is. I think we're on the 80% side, the 70% side of most of the stuff we're talking about, with not just the base on the Republican side, but most voters. But Emily Mills' article here telling people that we need gender-affirming care and, boys should be hitting from the girls' tees in sports, makes me think, those are 15% sides. Those are 10% sides. Those are 20% sides. And you can't get America to agree on much of anything at 70, 80, 90%. But what they're agreeing on is exactly the opposite of what Emily's pushing. So I hope the left continues to listen to folks like her and not learn anything from any elections or the pushback they're seeing, and hopefully create some more legislative losses here in the state.
Amen.
But that, we've had a long, intelligent, philosophical, policy-based discussion. So let's get to some candy, because I'm sure the listeners want it just as badly as we do. And the first thing I want to talk about is, I don't know if you've seen this story of a UWM professor, Kevin Rankin, who was just exposed for doing nothing. And when I mean nothing, I mean literally has not been doing anything at his job. Now, I know at the legislative level, Republicans have tackled this a little bit. And, I remember some old conversations with Speaker Voss, who really favored a publish or perish strategy when it came to university professors. So I think this guy is just one drop in an ocean of professors at the UW system that are not doing the work they need to do. But this guy, who's been working at UWM as a tenured track professor since 1987, made tenure in 1993, has been not doing much of any work.
So very interesting here. Certainly not something I was expecting to talk about. But the school said his academic papers effectively ended in 2001. Okay?
24 years.
24 years. Excuse me. Now, he said that he got tenure in 1993, so 8 years of essential work while on tenure. But effectively ended in 2001, and he had not received any external grants or contracts over a 15-year period, according to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. And this is a letter from the provost in 2024. It is unclear how any faculty member could justify such a record or have any expectation of continuing in a tenured faculty role with no scholarly output for 20 years.
My goodness.
So absolutely flamed by the provost at the time. Now, of course, he disputes that completely and points to some random bit of evidence, but ultimately he settles for parting ways. He basically paid him to go away, of course. But then UWM didn't want to comment, citing a policy of not commenting on personnel matters, which, of course, they could totally comment on it if they wanted to. And what is clear is this case was highlighted the power of the post-tenure review policy pushed by Republican lawmakers about a decade ago that became the justification to dismiss Rankin, which you're supposed to have reviewed tenure of professors every 5 years to ensure they're meeting expectations. So clearly, this guy missed, 4 reviews on tenure, and only now? So it sounds like someone turned a blind eye for decades until apparently, credit where credit is due. UWM finally grew a spine, I suppose, and said, how old was the guy probably?
Well, he started as Professor Track in 87, so he's at least in his 38.
So this dude is clearly, he's probably
an
older.
Old fella.
Yeah. So I guess I want to say good on UWM for finally pulling the trigger and getting rid of this guy, but also chastise UWM that it took this long. Really unfortunate that the taxpayers have to pay for essentially a teacher that hasn't done anything for decades.
How great of a job. Like, I know being a bureaucrat in Madison can be an easy job that you can hide behind. And you see those stories every once in a while coming out of D.C. or some state where the guy had been no-showing a job for decades. But, man, it must be easy to be a professor at UWM when you can get away with it for this long. So maybe someone on their board of trustees or maybe someone in the UW system will go, we should evaluate our professors and maybe look into what they're actually doing or what little insufficient amount of work they're doing is and maybe streamline those operations a bit. But I know I'm more optimistic than you on a lot of those. So want to talk about this other story.
One last thing.
Yeah.
UWM contended it had cause to fire Rankin, and the university paid him $46,000 and his attorney $40,000 in exchange for his resignation.
Man, I got to find one of those.
Yeah, pretty penny. I'd love to. Granted, he had tenure. This dude probably was making 6 figures easily, but nice little cherry on top.
So let's talk about this story about a Wisconsin man who, you may remember, faked his death, fled to the United States, and got 89 days in jail in his most recent sentencing for the 89 days he was missing. So you may remember Ryan Borgward, who appeared in court.
I thought it was Kirk Baxton.
We'll get to him in a second. But Ryan Borgward was sentenced to 89 days in jail, the number of days his deception lasted. So last year, he faked his death by tipping over his kayak and fleeing via mountain bike hundreds of miles so he could fly to Georgia, the country, not the state, to meet a woman he met online. And after 89
modern-day relationship.
Modern-day romance, who finally he was kicked out of his home with a woman who was from Uzbekistan.
Oh, my gosh.
Who probably sucked away all of his money before forcing him to go. So 89 days in jail. And really what I think a better punishment would be is 89 hours uninterrupted of him having to listen to his wife tell him what a dumbass he was for fleeing.
I mean, oh boy, honestly, this story's kind of sad on a lot of parts. Like, what takes a man? What brings a man to a point where he feels like he needs to fake his death?
You must really want to get out of your marriage.
Yeah.
But if you've got the money to go to Georgia and try to woo an Uzbekistan woman.
I mean, I feel like this was a situation he just didn't think through completely. He's like, well, you kind of have to give him some credit. I mean, he had a little bit of a plan. I'll fake my death.
Yeah, and Green Lake's super deep. So if you sink in that, it's tough to find.
You're gone.
It's hundreds. I think it's hundreds of feet deep at its deepest.
I don't know. I'll take your word for it on that one. But you had to know that that eventually they were going to be found out. Come on. Mm-hmm. Modern day policing's pretty good. You leave some tire tracks from your bike or something, and then they track you. I mean, your digital footprint is everywhere. Yeah. I don't know how you can evade that. So,
especially when you Google how to fake death and how to move money to international.
How to have a mail order a mail order bride, or how to meet foreign women and how to leave the country without letting anyone know. Yep, that totally worked, buddy. Mm-hmm. So, I guess enjoy the slammer for 89 days. I love the sentence though too. Very, very on point. 89 days for 89 days of deception.
So let's talk about Kirk Bangstad.
Another lunatic.
Yes, another lunatic, another a-hole who has been upsetting people near his business. And this is interesting in that we're not talking about the good folks of Minocqua that have put up with his shenanigans and nonsense for months and years on end, but the people on Oak Street in Madison, Wisconsin are already fed up with Kirk's tap room and beer garden that backs up to residential homes. So this is from WAOW, who is talking to Kurt and their neighbors directly next door to the business, who feels that their music has been too loud and putting up a sign on a fence reading, "Still no amp, sound permit, please don't do this." So Kurt has been playing amplified music without the proper permits.
Go figure.
Yeah. Go figure. This guy
just hates permits.
Yeah. And what's funny is like we're talking
I kind of do too, but like
we're talking about Madison here. Like we're talking about like actual lefties. You'd think that
this is his kind.
This is his people. Yeah. Like how bad are you as a neighbor that you're pissing off your people? So what he did was so he's been, accused of playing amplified music in a space too close to a residential area, and being denied a conditional use permit by the city of Madison's planning commission. But he got around it, of course, because he's a jackass, and the music they're now playing is with brass instruments.
Oh gosh.
So it's unamplified, but of course super loud. And his response to all this was, "You can't live in the heart of an urban city and get peace and quiet all the time."
The world revolves around Kirk.
Yes.
And, I got to give it to him. He is going to unite the left and the right in just hating him for just being an a-hole all the time to everybody.
If there's one thing the left and the right loves to come together on, it's brands and businesses that are totally screwing up.
You
got Cracker Barrel. Now you got Minocqua Brewing in Madison. And so a neighbor actually put up this QR code. And the QR code takes you to a gem of a website. And we'll put this on socials when the episode goes up. It is wokeonoak.neocities.org. And it looks like it's a beautifully made website with 8-bit, 16-bit graphics that show all of the neighbors who are pissed off at Kirk. They have videos on here showing Kirk just being a knob.
Like actual videos of him?
Actual videos of him being a knob. When he's confronted by these people, it goes to this thing that, again, looks like a original OG website on how to astroturf like a pro, making Facebook ads to make you look better. And screenshot on screenshot on screenshot of Kirk responding to people on their Facebook page. And I wish I had time to read all of these, but just shows how he relishes being a bad neighbor. And, of course, one of the best things about this is the Minocqua Brewing Company Super PAC donations and disbursement description, which breaks down what Kirk is paying himself for. And he breaks down dollar by dollar what he's getting in this, or what he's paying out. And it's $170,000, almost $171,000 in legal fees.
Oh my gosh.
Strategic consulting services, $67,000. So that's what he's paying himself.
Strategic consulting.
$53,000 in advertising, $31,000 in digital advertising, and a bunch of other little things, media production, radio advertising, design services, somehow 4% credit card processing fees, which seems enormous when you realize that he's paying almost $17,000 in credit card fees. But hey, if you're not paying the best, you're not doing the best diligence with how you're getting your PAC money, or I guess embezzling, which they're pitching, and this website pitches an effervescent blue Embez Ale, a taste that's hard to track. Should be his next beer. So we're going to have to share this website. Folks are going to have to check it out and see.
Just have fun with it.
Just have some fun with it, and know that even the left and the right can come together on one thing, and that's Kirk Bangstead is a jackass.
Well, in the article, it says the city of Madison does not have a formal complaint open regarding noise at Minocqua Brewing Company, which I thought was interesting. So it sounds like, I'm sure it sounds like the neighbors are trying to solve this kind of peacefully, although it seems like the tensions have grown. But so, if I'm the residents, just call for a noise complaint, get him on the record being noisy, and then, I don't know, sue him. Do something. That's a lot, obviously. Most neighbors probably don't want to have to go through all that, but my God, join the club. Everyone seems to have sued him at least once for, being an idiot. So what's one more time?
Exactly.
He'll just use his PAC money to pay off his legal fees. So,
well, with that, we'll call it. Wrap on the episode.
It's over.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to drop us that 5-star rating where available. It really helps us, and I do love seeing that number go up and up and up. Show notes can be found on our Substack, newfashionconservatives.substack.com. Make sure to sign up there so you're first to be alerted to any of our new content. Follow us on X at New Fashion Pod, Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube at New Fashion Conservatives. Send us memes, feedback, hate mail, whatever you got to newfashionpod@gmail.com, or text us via the Spotify app, which is found right on our page. Love to hear from you. Love hearing from you now. Love hearing more. Hope you had a great Labor Day weekend by the time you're hearing this, and we're out.